Justice for Corey. Justice for Corey. Justice for Corey. Justice for Corey. Justice for Corey.
28 seconds. That's all investigators say the physical confrontation lasted. In less than half a minute, a man riding a bicycle was dead. A police officer was hospitalized with a knife injury. Cell phone videos were spreading across social media before investigators had even secured the scene. Within hours, hundreds of people filled the streets of Madison demanding answers, and within days, one of the country's best-known civil rights attorneys was standing beside the victim's family, calling for accountability. But here's the question. How does a call about someone reportedly checking car door handles turn into one of the most controversial police shootings of 2026? Was this an unavoidable tragedy that unfolded in seconds? Or were there moments when things could have gone differently? Today, we're going to walk through everything that has happened in this case, from the very beginning to where the investigation stands today. We'll look at what police have said, what witnesses captured on video, what the family believes, and what investigators are still trying to answer. Because once you understand how quickly everything happened, you'll see why this case has divided so many people. Before we begin, if you enjoy detailed crime investigations that focus on the headlines, take a second to like this video, subscribe to Case Watch, and click the bell icon so you never miss another investigation. Now, let's start at the beginning. Madison, Wisconsin is not the kind of city that usually dominates national crime headlines. As the state capital and home to the University of Wisconsin, Madison is known for its lakes, bike paths, outdoor markets, neighborhood festivals, and active downtown. The Marquette neighborhood, often called the Willie Street area by locals, is one of the city's busiest communities, filled with restaurants, coffee shops, cyclists, and pedestrians. On an ordinary summer afternoon, people were eating lunch, shopping, riding bicycles, and going about their day. No one imagined they were about to witness an incident that would be replayed millions of times across the internet. According to the Madison Police Department, everything began shortly after 1:30 p.m. on July 22, 2026. Officers were dispatched after receiving a report that someone was checking the handles of parked vehicles. At that point, it appeared to be a routine property crime call. Police searched the area and soon located a man riding a bicycle who matched the description provided by the caller. That man was 38-year-old Corey Ruiz. To many people across the country, that was the first time they had ever heard his name. To his family, however, Corey was much more than a headline. They described him as a father who loved spending time with his daughter. Friends remembered him as someone who enjoyed basketball, music, and making people laugh. During public appearances after his death, relatives repeatedly said they wanted the world to remember Corey as a human being rather than allowing one day of his life to define everything about him. At the same time, another part of Corey's life quickly became public. Court records showed that he had previous convictions involving theft, resisting law enforcement, disorderly conduct, unauthorized use of a vehicle, and drug-related offenses. Police confirmed that 4 Madison officers were present during the encounter. Only one officer fired the shots that killed Corey Ruiz. Following department policy, all 4 officers were placed on administrative leave while an independent investigation began. That investigation was assigned to the Wisconsin Department of Justice's Division of Criminal Investigation rather than the Madison Police Department itself. The purpose of having an outside agency investigate is to provide an independent review of what occurred. One detail quickly became central to the investigation. The officers involved were not wearing body cameras. That meant investigators, and the public, would have to rely heavily on dispatch recordings, witness statements, physical evidence, surveillance footage where available, and cell phone videos recorded by people nearby. The absence of body camera footage immediately became one of the biggest issues in the case. Many people questioned why officers in a major city still were not equipped with body cameras, while others argued that investigators should wait until all available evidence had been reviewed before drawing conclusions. As officers approached Corey, exactly what was said during the first few moments remains unknown publicly. Police have said they attempted to make contact with him. According to the department, Corey then rode away on his bicycle instead of stopping. Officers followed him toward the intersection of Williamson Street and South Baldwin Street. That intersection would soon become the focus of national attention. People nearby continued walking, eating, shopping, and riding bicycles, unaware that events were about to unfold in a matter of seconds. Investigators later estimated that from the time Corey came off his bicycle until the final shots were fired, the confrontation lasted roughly 28 seconds. Think about that. 28 seconds. Less than the length of most television commercials. Less time than it takes to send a text message. Yet in those 28 seconds, decisions were made that changed countless lives forever. According to Madison Police Chief John Patterson, officers first attempted to use a taser during the confrontation. Police say the taser did not successfully end the struggle. Chief Patterson later stated that Corey then produced a fixed-blade knife. Police say one officer was cut during the encounter, suffering injuries that required hospital treatment but were not considered life-threatening. Moments later, that same officer fired multiple shots. Corey Ruiz fell to the ground. Officers immediately requested emergency medical assistance and began providing aid while paramedics responded. Despite those efforts, Corey died at the scene. What happened during those final moments has become the central question of this investigation. Because there were no body cameras, the first videos the public saw were recorded by ordinary people standing nearby. Some witnesses screamed. Others shouted as officers surrounded Corey. Within minutes, those videos began appearing online. Before investigators had completed their work, before forensic testing had even begun, millions of people were already watching, replaying, and debating those final seconds. And almost immediately, two very different narratives began to emerge. Police maintained that officers faced an immediate threat after Corey allegedly produced a knife and injured an officer. The Ruiz family and their attorney later argued that the publicly available videos raised serious questions about whether deadly force was necessary at the moment it was used, and called for a full, transparent investigation. But while investigators were beginning that work behind the scenes, something else was already happening outside. Madison residents were taking to the streets. And before the sun had even set that evening, the city was experiencing one of its largest public demonstrations in recent memory. As news of the shooting spread across Madison, the reaction was almost immediate. By early evening, hundreds of people had gathered near the scene and later marched through downtown. Many carried signs demanding justice for Corey Ruiz. Others called for transparency, accountability, and the release of all available evidence. The shooting had happened only hours earlier, but it had already become the city's biggest story. The demonstrations continued as protesters made their way to Madison's popular concerts on the square event. What was supposed to be an evening of music quickly became the site of another public demonstration as protesters interrupted the event, chanting and urging city leaders to address the shooting. While the protests continued outside, investigators were already beginning the process of collecting evidence. Under Wisconsin law, the Wisconsin Department of Justice's Division of Criminal Investigation took over the investigation. This is the standard procedure whenever an officer is involved in a fatal shooting. Their investigators began photographing the scene, collecting physical evidence, interviewing witnesses, reviewing dispatch records, and obtaining every available video that might help explain what happened. At the same time, the Madison Police Department confirmed that all 4 officers involved in the encounter had been placed on administrative leave while the investigation moved forward. The following day, city officials held their first public news conference. The briefing included Madison Police Chief John Patterson, Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, and Common Council President Sabrina Madison. Chief Patterson began by explaining the sequence of events as understood by investigators at that stage. He confirmed that officers had responded to a report of a man checking parked vehicle door handles, later identified as Corey Ruiz. He said officers attempted to contact Ruiz, who then rode away on his bicycle. According to Patterson, officers caught up with him near Williamson Street and South Baldwin Street, where a struggle followed. The chief said officers first deployed a taser in an attempt to gain control of the situation. He stated that the taser was unsuccessful and that Ruiz then produced a fixed-blade knife, injuring one of the officers. According to Patterson, the injured officer responded by firing multiple shots. The officer who was injured was transported to a hospital with injuries that were later described as non-life-threatening. Patterson also confirmed that there were no body camera recordings because the officers involved were not wearing body cameras during the incident. As the press conference continued, it took an unexpected turn. Several protesters entered the room and interrupted the briefing. Some demanded immediate accountability. Others criticized the city's handling of the incident and questioned why officers were not equipped with body cameras.
Because I'm going to keep talking, because I was born to talk my talk and walk my walk too. I told these young people back here on our way here that we have the power, not that badge, not that weapon. We have the power. The city of Madison is corrupt, from the DA to the what's the name of this? The Department of Independent Monitoring. We don't want any of that talk. You've given us this speech with "you'll deliver justice." Oh, we've seen the cameras. We've seen it was a knife in this young man's hand. We don't want to hear that today. We didn't want to hear it when they put their neck on George Floyd's neck. We don't their foot on George Floyd's neck, and we don't want to hear it today. What do you have to say about that? No. Oh, you don't get to talk, I said. Right. Go ahead.
Enough is enough.
I'll step aside.
That's right. Give me this microphone then. Excuse me. That's right. My name is Carlos Stinson. I represent APTAP, all power to all people, zero power to Zionists, zero.
The disruption itself became another major headline because it reflected just how emotional the community had become less than 24 hours after the shooting. Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway acknowledged the community's grief and frustration. She said she had watched the publicly circulating cell phone videos and understood why many residents had questions. She emphasized that every life has value and that the investigation needed to be thorough, independent, and transparent before any conclusions were reached. She also confirmed that investigators were reviewing additional surveillance footage from nearby businesses that had not yet been released publicly. Common Council President Sabrina Madison delivered one of the most emotional statements of the day. After watching the videos herself, she said she had questions about whether the shooting was necessary and stressed that the community deserved complete transparency as investigators worked through the evidence. She urged residents to allow the independent investigation to proceed while promising that city leaders would continue listening to community concerns. Outside the press conference, the memorial at Williamson Street and South Baldwin Street continued to grow. Flowers, candles, handwritten notes, and photographs covered the sidewalk where Corey Ruiz had died. People stopped throughout the day to pray, cry, or simply stand in silence. Many of those visiting the memorial had never met Corey. Others had known him for years. Despite their different backgrounds, they shared one thing in common: they wanted answers. As investigators worked behind closed doors, another major development was taking shape. Corey Ruiz's family announced they had retained nationally known civil rights attorney Ben Crump. His involvement immediately brought even more national attention to the case. When Crump arrived in Madison, he stood beside Corey's family and called for what he described as a full and transparent investigation. He questioned whether the use of deadly force was necessary based on the publicly available videos, while acknowledging that investigators would ultimately need to review all available evidence before reaching legal conclusions. The family's message was deeply personal. They asked the public to remember Corey not only through his criminal history or the final moments of his life, but also as a father, son, brother, and loved one whose death had left an enormous void in their family. For them, the case was no longer about headlines. It was about the person they had lost. And as the investigation continued, both investigators and the public were left waiting for one thing above all else: a complete picture of what happened during those 28 seconds. By this point, the investigation had become much bigger than a single police encounter. It had become a conversation about trust. Trust between police and the community. Trust in the investigative process. And trust that, eventually, the public would receive a complete picture of what happened during those 28 seconds. The day after the shooting, city officials held another public briefing to address the growing concerns. Police Chief John Patterson confirmed that the Wisconsin Department of Justice's Division of Criminal Investigation would handle the investigation independently. He explained that all 4 officers involved had been placed on administrative leave, which is standard procedure after an officer-involved fatal shooting. He also confirmed that the officer who fired the shots was a veteran officer, but said his identity, along with the identities of the other officers involved, would be released by the state investigators according to Wisconsin's procedures. During the briefing, Patterson acknowledged the tension throughout the city. He told reporters that everyone could feel how fragile the public's trust had become and urged people to allow the independent investigation to run its course before reaching conclusions. But the press conference didn't go as planned. Before officials could finish answering questions, more than a dozen protesters entered the room. One protester walked directly to the microphone and began speaking over city officials. Others shouted demands for accountability and called for the officer involved to be identified and arrested. For several minutes, the briefing turned into a shouting match. The interruption itself became national news because it reflected just how emotional the situation had become less than 24 hours after the shooting. Outside the government building, the memorial where Corey Ruiz died continued to grow. Flowers covered the sidewalk. Candles burned throughout the evening. People left handwritten notes, photographs, and signs asking for justice. Some visitors had known Corey personally. Others had never met him, but felt compelled to stop after watching the cell phone videos circulating online. The following day brought another major development. Corey's family decided they would no longer let others tell his story for them. Standing outside the Wisconsin state capitol, they appeared publicly for the first time alongside civil rights attorney Ben Crump. It was an emotional event. Corey's mother, Elsa Ruiz, struggled to get through her remarks. Fighting back tears, she described her son as someone who loved his daughter and loved his family. She said she never imagined she would have to bury her own child and insisted that, whatever mistakes he had made in his life, he did not deserve to die the way he did. Corey's 13-year-old daughter also spoke. She told reporters that she first learned about her father's death from a cousin and was still trying to process what had happened. She described her heartbreak in simple but powerful words, saying she didn't know how to put her feelings into words. Her appearance became one of the most emotional moments of the press conference. The child's mother explained that she had seen the cell phone video before realizing the man in it was Corey. She said the shooting happened close to their home and near their daughter's school, making the tragedy even more personal for their family. Then Ben Crump stepped to the microphone. Crump argued that the encounter should never have escalated to deadly force. He questioned why officers pursued Corey over what began as a report involving suspected property-related activity and urged investigators to examine every second of the encounter carefully. He repeatedly called for transparency and accountability while emphasizing that the public deserved to see all of the available evidence. At the same time, police continued to maintain that the officer fired after, according to their account, Corey produced a knife and injured an officer during the struggle. Those competing accounts remain central to the investigation, and state investigators have not yet announced their final findings. Another issue also moved to the forefront: body cameras. Chief Patterson had already confirmed that none of the involved officers were wearing body cameras. That fact quickly became one of the biggest talking points in Madison. Many residents questioned why a city of Madison's size still did not have officers equipped with body cameras, arguing that such footage could have answered many of the questions now being debated. Without body camera footage, investigators have instead had to piece together the encounter using witness interviews, physical evidence, dispatch recordings, surveillance footage where available, and multiple cell phone videos recorded from different angles. As the days passed, national media organizations began conducting their own visual analyses of those videos. They synchronized footage from multiple witnesses to better understand the sequence of events. But even with those efforts, significant questions remained because no single video captured every moment of the struggle. That is why investigators continue to emphasize that the complete picture will depend on all of the evidence, not any single clip viewed in isolation. Today, the investigation remains active. The Wisconsin Department of Justice continues reviewing the evidence before submitting its findings to prosecutors. No final decision has been announced regarding whether the officer's use of deadly force was legally justified. No criminal charges have been announced. For Corey's family, the wait continues. For the officers involved, the investigation continues. And for the Madison community, the search for answers is far from over. As this case continues to unfold, many questions remain unanswered, and investigators are still working to determine exactly what happened. What do you think? Could this tragedy have been prevented? What evidence do you think is most important in this investigation? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you found this report informative, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Case Watch, and click the bell icon for more in-depth coverage. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.